On Tuesday, May 11, 2021, at 4:30 a.m., a man named Harold Lomas Kopolos, also known as Babis, was violently awakened in his bed during a harrowing incident. He had been renting a two-story maisonette in the suburbs of Glia, situated on the outskirts of Athens, Greece. Babis had little time to defend himself as three assailants, their identities concealed by hoods, forcibly entered and subdued him. Armed with pistols, they swiftly bound his hands and subsequently blindfolded him. Meanwhile, the intruders turned their attention to his wife, a 19-year-old named Caroline Crouch, which startled their 11-month-old daughter, who was sleeping nearby. The assailants, speaking with Greek and Albanian accents, repeatedly demanded to know the location of the money. Unbeknownst to Caroline, what began as a robbery would tragically culminate in her murder. Caroline Crouch was born on July 12, 2001, in Athens, to retired engineer David Crouch and Susan de la Costa. When she was 8 years old, the family moved to the island of Alonissos, drawn by the allure of the coastal environment. From a young age, Caroline embraced her beachside lifestyle, developing a passion for scuba diving and swimming. She met her future husband, Babis, during a Good Friday parade in 2017, when she was just 15 years old, while Babis was working as a commercial helicopter pilot. 3 years later, they married in Portugal on July 15, 2019. Just days before her tragic death, Babis and Caroline had acquired a plot of land, with aspirations to construct their dream home. A couple sought to acquire land for themselves and their young daughter. To facilitate this purchase, Caroline received a gift of $50,000 from her parents. Additionally, the couple had approximately $10,000 in cash hidden within their home to cover construction expenses. At that time in Greece, the public was generally distrustful of banks due to the persistent threat of bankruptcy, leading many to keep cash stored at home as a safer alternative. Caroline likely shared this viewpoint regarding cash storage and could not have foreseen the events that would unfold on May 11th. On that day, both Babas and Caroline, along with their daughter, were engulfed in terror as intruders demanded information about their hidden funds. In a moment of desperation, Babas revealed the unconventional location of their money. The intruders opened a Monopoly game box and seized all the cash that Babas and Caroline had saved for their dream home. However, their greed did not stop there. They continued to ransack the house, taking jewelry and other valuable items. Despite having surrendered everything they owned, Babas and Caroline pleaded for their lives and the safety of their daughter. Babas could hear his wife's screams as the intruders threatened their 11-month-old infant with a firearm. Although blindfolded, he struggled against his restraints, but the rope around his neck was tightened to the point of causing him to lose consciousness repeatedly. Babis eventually lost consciousness, but regained it after some time. Upon becoming aware, he realized that the intruders had vacated the premises. The only sound that filled the air was the anguished cries of his infant daughter. After approximately 30 minutes, Babis managed to maneuver his mobile phone closer and, using his nose, dialed emergency services. Once the call was connected, he urgently pleaded for assistance, requesting an ambulance and providing his location. However, due to the duct tape binding his mouth, his words were muffled throughout the conversation. The operator inquired about the situation, but all Babis could manage to convey was that robbers had invaded their home. An hour and a half had elapsed since the intruders had entered Babis and Caroline's residence. First responders arrived at the scene around 6 a.m. As they ascended the front steps to enter the house, they were met with a scene that could only be described as horrific. The living area and kitchen were in complete disarray, with drawers pulled open and personal belongings strewn across the floor. Among the chaos lay an open Monopoly box, the very container where Babis and Caroline had concealed their money. Additionally, a security camera was discovered on the living room couch, appearing to have been forcibly removed from its mounting, with its memory card missing. Tragically, from the staircase hung the lifeless body of a white and brown husky puppy, having been strangled by its own leash. Babis was found on the bedroom floor, his eyes and mouth bound with duct tape that extended to his neck, and he was restrained. Caroline Crouch was found lying face down on the bed, her hands and feet bound behind her. Beside her, their infant daughter was crying and attempting to wake her mother by pushing her. Upon arrival, first responders declared Caroline deceased, while the child, though visibly distressed, appeared to be unharmed. The responders quickly noted Caroline's pale complexion, leading them to conclude that she had been murdered. Babis, her husband, went into shock upon being released from his restraints and discovering the lifeless body of his wife, whom he had loved for 5 years. The officers promptly ensured the infant's safety and began questioning Babis regarding his account of the events and the condition of the crime scene. Investigations revealed the presence of 4 men at the scene. Police determined that 3 men had entered the residence while the 4th acted as a lookout. They reconstructed the sequence of events leading to the murder and subsequent escape as follows. First, the intruders approached the house via a dirt road leading to the back entrance. Second, after failing to break in through the rear door, they removed security pins from a basement window to gain entry. Third, upon entering the home, they killed Roxy, the family's 7-month-old husky, using her own leash as the murder weapon. Fourth, the 3 men proceeded to the main bedroom where Babis and Caroline were asleep. Fifth, they vandalized the house and stole money from a Monopoly box. Sixth, before departing, they smothered Caroline with a pillow. Seventh, as Babis was drifting in and out of consciousness, the intruders may have presumed he was dead and left, believing their task was complete. The investigation into Caroline's death revealed that there were no witnesses present. It was determined that the 20-year-old female did not experience an instantaneous demise. Rather, she endured an assault lasting approximately 6 minutes. Bruises found on her body indicated signs of struggle, while injuries to her lips and tongue suggested the potential use of sharp objects. No evidence of sexual assault was discovered. Although the damage inflicted upon the couple's residence was significant, the intruders left no substantial evidence behind. The only item recovered by emergency responders was the hood of one of the assailants. Based on Babis' account of the incident, it was inferred that the hood had fallen during his attempt to defend himself. While this piece of evidence was minor in the context of such a serious case, it allowed Babis to provide a description of the perpetrator, leading to the creation of a sketch depicting a tall, overweight individual with dark skin. Despite his disorientation, Babis was also able to identify 2 firearms used in the attack, a black pistol and a silver Colt. The investigation further revealed that the intruders made off with $10,000 in cash and jewelry valued at $20,000. Police concluded that this was the work of professional criminals who had surveilled the family and chosen an opportune moment to strike. A police spokesperson characterized the incident as brutal and violent, suggesting it was perpetrated by individuals lacking empathy. Numerous speculations emerged following the revelation of details from the investigation into the murder of Caroline Crouch, particularly regarding the strong antisocial personality of the suspects involved. A prevalent line of inquiry among the public was the question of why murder was deemed necessary if financial gain was the motive. Some theories suggested that the intruders may have been under the influence of drugs, impairing their ability to control their actions, while others posited that Caroline might have recognized them, prompting her to resist and fight back, given her status as a black belt kickboxer. It was speculated that the intruders felt compelled to silence her to maintain control, especially as she may have begun to scream when her 11-month-old daughter was threatened with a gun. Despite the various theories circulating, investigators were resolute in their belief that the attack had been premeditated. This conclusion was drawn from the understanding that the intruders were aware of the couple's financial assets hidden within their home. Consequently, the police conducted interviews with individuals in Caroline's inner circle, suspecting that the gang had received prior information about the couple. In conjunction with these inquiries, security camera footage from nearby residences and businesses was scrutinized, revealing a dark-colored vehicle accompanied by a motorcycle that had been observed near the couple's residence on the morning of the murder. Caroline Crouch was laid to rest 3 days after her tragic death on the Greek island of Alonissos, a location that held sentimental value as the place where her parents had fallen in love and where she had spent her childhood. Babis, her husband, paid heartfelt tribute to his wife, expressing his gratitude for having met her and for the love they shared. Babis expressed his profound fortune in being the father of their daughter, remarking that she would grow up without memories of her mother. He added that Caroline was the essence of joy in his life and would forever remain close to him through their daughter. Meanwhile, as Caroline was being laid to rest, a vehicle was stopped in northeast Greece during a routine check. Inside was a 36-year-old Georgian national named Georgi Harajishvili, who was en route to the Bulgarian border. Although he presented his passport, it was quickly determined to be counterfeit. Who was this individual, and what connection did he have to Caroline's murder? He was soon identified as Georgi Harajishvili, a violent criminal with a history of multiple convictions. He was wanted for 12 burglaries that had occurred throughout Athens over the preceding 6 months. His potential involvement in the case was underscored by the fact that 3 of these crimes took place in the vicinity of Babis and Caroline's neighborhood. One notable incident occurred in December when Harajishvili, along with 3 accomplices, broke into a residence through a rear window, mirroring the circumstances surrounding Babis and Caroline's situation. During that robbery, they forcibly dragged the female occupant by her hair and threatened to slit her throat, ultimately stealing cash and jewelry valued at approximately 10,000 euros. Their subsequent target was on March 7th, just 2 months prior to Babis and Caroline's tragic event, during which they bound 4 individuals, including an elderly couple and their cleaning lady, and made off with cash and other valuable items. If the patterns of his criminal activity were not sufficient to implicate him in the murder, there were additional factors that further established his connection. The similarities between the sketch created from Babis's description of the intruder and the evidence accumulated against Tustisali included a history of violent break-ins, an attempt to flee the country, and a resemblance to the sketch. Given these factors, the police were confident they had identified their suspect. Haradzish was arrested and detained for 4 days, during which physical methods were employed to extract information. He was subjected to repeated questioning regarding his arrival at the location, his entry into the house, and the murder of Caroline. The physical methods used resulted in a concussion, yet he maintained his position, asserting that he had never heard of Caroline Crouch. Ultimately, the evidence against him proved insufficient, leading to his exoneration from any involvement in the murder. Consequently, 3 police officers were demoted from the Athens homicide squad. As the investigation continued, the police shifted their focus to a local Albanian organized crime group. Initially, they compiled a list of 100 individuals, which was subsequently narrowed down to 10, all of whom were part of a criminal roster known as the Red List. Mugshots of these individuals were presented to Babis, although the police withheld additional details. The case was progressing more slowly than anticipated, causing public frustration, especially as racially motivated crimes were on the rise. Information regarding Caroline's case was so limited that even a substantial monetary reward went unclaimed. By this time, residents of Athens were living in fear, uncertain of who might be the next victim, while media reports indicated that experts were expressing concern over the situation. This case was far from ordinary. Had it been so, it would have been resolved by now. Investigative details revealed a lack of DNA or fingerprints at the scene. Caroline's family expressed their gratitude for the ongoing pursuit of justice. Babis conveyed to journalists his hope that no one else would endure a similar ordeal. He supported the police's efforts and remained visible in the media to keep Caroline's case in the public eye. Babis was also active on social media, responding to inquiries and thanking those who continued to offer support. A significant development occurred on June 17th, 37 days after Caroline's tragic murder, during a small memorial service held for her. Attendees noticed detectives present at the ceremony. Once the event concluded, the investigators discreetly approached Babis, requesting his escort to Athens. They had obtained new information regarding the case and urged him to identify a suspect. Unaware of what was to come, Babis agreed. By this time, investigators had pursued numerous leads and analyzed critical details surrounding the night of Caroline's death. Discrepancies emerged. Babis had informed the police that intruders entered through a basement window, which was too small for the physique of the alleged assailant he had described. Furthermore, while Babis claimed that the house had been ransacked, neighbors reported to the police that they heard no such disturbances that night. A couple's puppy was heard crying, yet there was no indication of a trashed house, no calls for assistance, and no crying infant present. The residents lacked any fingerprints or DNA evidence, raising the perplexing question of why the intruders would restrain a male and assault a female. Babis asserted that the intruders must have removed the memory card from the living room security camera. However, data indicated that the card had been taken out at 1:20 a.m., several hours prior to the alleged entry of the criminals. Additional information revealed that Caroline was wearing a smartwatch that tracked her pulse. Readings at 3:58 a.m. showed she was asleep, but by 4:05 a.m., her pulse had increased by 50%, suggesting significant physical and mental distress. By 4:11 a.m., the readings indicated that her heart had ceased beating, occurring before the time Babis claimed the murder transpired. Conversely, Babis had a fitness application on his smartphone, which indicated he was moving around during the period he was purportedly restrained. The police attempted to simulate Babis dialing emergency services with his phone, but no one was able to replicate the action. Investigations also uncovered that Caroline had tried to reserve a hotel room for herself and her daughter on the night of her death, as evidenced by a text message sent to. Her friend disclosed that she had been contemplating leaving Babis during the time he met Caroline while on holiday in Alanis. Babis's mother resided on the island and worked as a teacher at Caroline's school. At that time, Babis was charismatic, intelligent, enjoyed photography, and was financially secure. He captured Caroline's attention by piloting a helicopter over her school, an act that many teenage girls might dream of. However, Caroline was unaware that this fantasy would soon devolve into a nightmare. She believed they were an ideal couple and confided in her family about her happiness. Babis proposed to Caroline a year and a half into their relationship. Although she was underage at the time, she turned 18 just 3 days later. The couple exchanged vows and settled in Ganara. In the early years of their marriage, Caroline attended college in Athens while Babis continued his career as a pilot. They actively shared their seemingly joyful life on social media, portraying a relationship filled with love and romance. However, the narrative in Caroline's diary told a different story. She frequently questioned her relationship with Babis, and in 2019, she documented a significant argument, expressing her thoughts of leaving to stay with her sister and her uncertainty about continuing the relationship. Over the course of their marriage, Babis' behavior became increasingly manipulative and controlling, a tendency that had its roots in their early interactions. Babis and Caroline's wedding was anything but conventional. They chose to forego a traditional Greek wedding, typically characterized by joyous celebrations with family and friends, opting instead for a private elopement. What might have appeared to be a romantic decision from the man she adored was, in reality, an effort to isolate her. This pattern of isolation persisted upon their return home, where Babis assumed the role of the sole provider, while Caroline, a university student with limited financial resources, struggled. Although her mother, Susan, would occasionally send financial support, Babis would take control of those funds as well. In her diary, Caroline expressed profound love for Babis, stating that despite the pain their relationship caused her, she felt unable to leave him. She documented a heart-wrenching confrontation with her husband, revealing her desire to leave, but her pregnancy made that impossible. Caroline wrote, "I stayed with him so my daughter would not grow up without both parents." An entry from July 2020 noted the birth of her child, coinciding with the day she confided in Babis about her wish to depart, leaving her feeling devastated. Her diary also contained references to a house in Halandri, Athens. What began as a fairy tale romance for Caroline had devolved into a profound abyss filled with anguish, horror, and despair, leaving her feeling estranged and trapped in a situation from which she could not escape. This abyss ultimately threatened to engulf her. Additionally, phone records from hours before her tragic murder revealed heated and combative exchanges between Babis and Caroline, highlighting the growing distance and dysfunction within their relationship. Investigators informed Babis that he had become the primary suspect in the murder case. They presented him with compelling and undeniable evidence that highlighted discrepancies in the statements he had previously provided. After enduring an 8-hour interrogation, he ultimately succumbed to the pressure and began to confess. However, his admission was riddled with falsehoods. He claimed that he and Caroline had engaged in an argument on May 10th, the evening prior to her death. Babis asserted that their disputes revolved solely around their daughter, and he alleged that Caroline was intent on taking the child and leaving him, which caused him to lose control, as he described the child as his entire world. Further elaborating on that night, Babis recounted that Caroline had thrown their infant into the crib and demanded that he vacate the premises. He accused Caroline of initiating physical violence, stating that she had pushed and struck him. He claimed that this led to a distortion of his judgment, resulting in him lashing out, strangling her, and suffocating her with a pillow, using his full body weight to do so. A calculated act of murder in the presence of their 11-month-old child. He contemplated disposing of the body but deemed it impractical. Soon after, he considered framing another individual for the crime. To create the illusion of a home invasion, he even killed Roxy, positioned his child next to Caroline's lifeless body, and bound himself with rope and duct tape. He expressed a belief that he deserved punishment and owed a significant apology to all those he had harmed. While he grappled with the reality of his actions, he attempted to deflect responsibility onto Caroline, claiming that his behavior had deteriorated into instability and aggression following the death of their sole child, a child who would now face life without her mother, never to learn about the woman who was violently taken from her by the man she once cherished. This case subsequently became known as the murder that deceived the world. Babas grew increasingly assured of evading justice, neglecting to eliminate crucial evidence. In May 2022, he was charged and convicted of premeditated murder, obstruction of justice, providing false information to authorities, and animal cruelty.